over the course of a year and a half of being there and working on a team like this, being the only Black woman, obviously that already comes with its own challenges. Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. If you watched my last video, then you probably already know what this video is about, but I'm actually going to break down in a bit more detail what I was talking about in that video. I'll be a little bit more detailed in this one in what's going on, what I'm talking about, and what I'm thinking moving forward. Basically, in that last video, I talked about how it was becoming apparent that my current employer is trying to push me out of the company. I haven't talked a whole lot about what I do for work on this channel, or really at all, because I like to keep the two kind of separate. But essentially, I'm a program manager basically for a nonprofit, private, independent school. I lead the preschool program. This is the sort of profession I've been in for almost 10 years now. My master's degree is in early childhood education and leadership and advocacy. Pretty much I taught all ages, from birth to pre-K. I've worked in all positions that you could possibly work in a early childhood center or school. All the pieces are pretty much there, right? This is what I do. This is what I know. So yes, I know what I'm talking about when I talk about processes, structures within these schools, and overall general management of schools in this capacity, because I've been doing this for so long. In the last video, I mentioned how my employer had essentially misrepresented my contract when we signed it for the school year. Around August or September, before the school starts, had a little bit different language than the one from the previous school year, which was fine. I asked plenty of questions to clarify this new language, or this missing language, should I say. She answered all those questions and everything seemed fine. We both seemed to understand what was expected, what was needed, what would happen. That was in August. At the end of November, I'll say, or mid-November, I reached out to the finance director and I asked a few questions about PTO, because it was in the contract, but it had never been added to my actual account, like my time bank. So she went in and fixed that. She added it, and she made a statement, something about the school breaks or something that did not align with the conversation and contract that I had with the executive director. So I went to the executive director and I said, hey, finance director said this thing, but that's not what we agreed on in August. So is there just a mix-up? What's going on? I just need some clarification. She basically was like, oh, well, yeah, that's not what your contract says, but that's what I meant. Do that. That's not what I agreed to. That's not what we agreed to. That's not what you said when I asked you questions about this 4 or 5 months ago. She was just like super unempathetic, unapologetic. It was just like, oh, well, sorry, I made a mistake. But I was like, no, is there any other option? You know, I'm not understanding how you can just expect someone to do that. That makes no sense to me. Just, there was nothing. And then she started throwing out the idea of me leaving, quitting, looking for a different employment, asking me, is that something I'm going to be doing at this point? And I was like, I never said that. Because at that point, I mean, I was just trying to figure out like what this inconsistency was and how we were going to fix it. You can't just have someone sign something and then tell them that they have to do something else. That's not how it works. She started throwing that around about finding a different job and how, oh, well, you probably have plenty of options. It's like, I didn't say that though. Well, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just saying, if we can't get it solved at that point, I was just like, okay, whatever. It is what it is. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You do whatever it is that you feel like you want to do. And okay, I'm not gonna discuss this again. It was at that point that she then, and I guess the finance director then, went and did some research. They realized that essentially they had been breaking labor laws, salary laws, something. That essentially what would need to happen is that they would have to pay me and another employee a good deal of money, as well as initiate a wage boost in order to comply with these laws that they have been breaking for 5 years. The thinking is that caused a lot of upset, on top of the fact that I was questioning the contract and these expectations. Then they would have to pay me even more, even though I'm the person who sparked all of this controversy when no one else had been questioning anything. Everyone else had just been going along with it for all these years. And that most likely made them very upset. And so they started working even harder, I would say, to push me out of this school. So I also want to point out that I am the only person of color on this entire leadership team, which consists of 5 people right now. 4.5, maybe 5 people. The executive director and this finance director are both white women, older white women. I'm gonna use that word. And they are pretty close friends. Pretty close. All of them. I could go into a lot more detail just on that whole thing. But I wanted to point out the fact that over the course of a year and a half of being there and working on a team like this, being the only Black woman, obviously that already comes with its own challenges. Trying to make sure that things are being done equitably, not just for myself and the leadership team, but for the staff members who, before I got there, also were not being treated in a certain way. And I had to make all these suggestions and point out all these regulations that were being violated, essentially. That's for a whole different thing. We're talking about something else today. Anyways, well, essentially, I'm at this point where it's like, okay, it's very clear that you're not trying to retain me here. I can't see how what's being said and done to me in these past few weeks could have any intention behind it to keep me on board. There's just no way. You also don't keep asking them or suggesting to them about finding other jobs. That's just weird. At this point, it's like, where do I go? What do I do? Obviously, I could just quit. I could just say, like, forget it. Forget whatever y'all are talking about. I'm not gonna argue about it. I'm not gonna do it. I'm out of here. Like, do whatever you want to do. Or, as some people do, just kind of sit back and let it happen, I guess. That's really not in my character. I'm not that type of person. You are not about to just treat me any type of way, especially not when it comes to my money, my career. I guess that's not even like an option for real, because I couldn't even fathom. Okay, I'll just do whatever. Like, don't pay me. It's okay. You don't have to pay me for doing work for you. In what universe is that happening? Here's the barriers to that. And interestingly enough, one of the barriers is not the money. That's not the type of situation that I'm in. Fortunately, what's making this so difficult for me to just cut my ties and walk away? One of the biggest ones is that, as I've said in previous videos, my daughter goes to this school. So she is enrolled there in a classroom and goes there every day. I've taught toddlers, and yes, it's very hard. It makes it hard for them when they are not, things are not consistent, if they keep getting moved around, if they're not showing up, all the time, and it's just hard. It's hard for them. So I worry for my daughter's sake, and perhaps that's part of what they're thinking, is that they can just do whatever, treat me however, and I have no options because I want my daughter to stay there, which is not 100% the case. Next, my staff members. I have hired personally and trained personally a good amount of staff at this point at this school. And they have a certain expectation of me, which I like upholding for them. I like taking care of my staff members, but I also like upholding the values of treating staff a certain way and fighting for those staff who have needs or whatever and they're not being met. And that's something I've been consistently doing. And since I got there, this is a career path for me. It's not a job. It does make me feel a bit bad to simply walk away and basically abandon those staff, and it's kind of the same way I feel about families who I've enrolled at this school. I've promised them this great experience for their child and things like that, and if I just walk away, there's no telling what the program might turn into. There would be effects to the families and the staff members if I were to just literally get up and walk away, right? I got the ball rolling for certain things there. I am the one who is facilitating different classes and workshops and all this stuff that the families have been enjoying. That stuff wasn't happening before I got there. If I was to walk away, who's picking that up? And from my experience at this organization, it's quite likely that if I were to simply pick up and walk away, because of the fact that it's kind of obvious that I'm being retaliated against, it's not going to be presented that way to the parents. No part of me believes that they're going to honestly tell families that the director of the program stepped down and left the organization because they were upset about needing to fairly compensate her. That's not going to happen. So there's no telling what happened to my professional name, in the community. And that's something that makes me really uncomfortable. I really don't like that idea. We're brought back to this crossroads, I guess. What do you do? At this point, I don't have a 100% answer. It's the holidays. And this is where they've kind of left me. And yes, this has been going on through the holidays, just up until this very morning, mind you. Now what?